Welcome, everybody, to our live edition of the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast right here on the Winner's Circle Sports Betting channel, brought to you by GamblersWorld.net. I'm Ross Benjamin. I'll be joined today by Mr. Jesse Schule. Sean Higgs is out today as he had some personal commitments, so it's just us two. And we're rearing and ready to go and to take all your questions and comments. And don't forget, folks, this is your chance to chime in with your questions and comments. So we got some stuff to cover, namely baseball picks, free picks, that is. To start the show, we're going to be talking a little bit about the NBA game tonight. And but without further ado, Jesse, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, Ross. I'd like to tell you that I'm excited about tonight's NBA game or about Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals, but it hasn't been the best year for finals series in the NHL and the NBA. We'll do our best to hype it up and pretend it's a big deal, but both of those series look like they're already over.
Yeah, it would seem to be. I'm sort of surprised that Edmonton got off to such a slow start, falling behind in that game 4-1 after two periods, and then their valiant effort to come back in that game fell short. I just, to me, when I watched that series, though, Jesse, it's quite apparent to me that Florida is just a better team. There's no two ways about it. I mean, Edmonton's got the star power, but I just think that Florida, number one, they're more disciplined. And number two, I think their four lines are stronger across the board, meaning there's a lot of balance between line 1 and 2. Obviously, they're top heavy with Draisaitl and McDavid in the first two lines. But they're number 3 and 4. Sometimes that's a difference in a series, right? Jesse, is not so much how your top two lines do, but how does your third line and fourth line produce? Are they a liability? Can they contribute offensively at all? Could your number 3 line or 4 line is usually your defensive line, which you send out against the other team's top line, especially if you're at home where you get the last change. But any thoughts in terms of what you saw so far as applies to what I just said, or what your own thoughts are on that?
My own thoughts, Ross. I don't like answering your questions. I like to make up my own questions and my own answers. But I guess I got to ask you, because that ties into what I want to say, is did you hear the Edmonton Oilers coach asked a question prior to the series starting? Are you concerned about the Stanley Cup Finals experience that the Florida Panthers have?
Yeah, he went to throw a shade at the Buffalo Bills of the early 90s, saying that they went to 4 straight Super Bowls, and how did they do after they lost the first one, and how well was the Super Bowl experience? How did that pay off for them? Yeah, I saw that. It was in poor taste. I don't care who it is. I know why you're bringing it up with me. Obviously, it's dear to my heart. But, I mean, do you agree that I thought that was an unnecessary comment, no matter what the team was?
Well, one of the reasons I brought it up, Ross, is because I know you wouldn't like the comment. Yeah. And the other reason is it seems to be blowing up in his face because they seem to be using that experience, and it seems to be serving them quite well right now, because Sergei Bobrovsky was not great in last year's finals. He made whatever adjustments he had to make. The team in front of him is playing a lot better. So the experience seems to be paying dividends for the Florida Panthers, despite what the Oilers coach had to say. That being said, what is he supposed to say, right? He can't say, we're screwed because they were here last year.
He could have used a better reference. He could have used a different approach. I think that might have came off the top of his head. And I will say this, I'll challenge. I mean, New England came close at 3 Super Bowls in a row. In this modern day of the NFL, I don't think we'll ever see a team go to the Super Bowl 4 consecutive years in a row. I shouldn't say never, but it's highly unlikely. It's a whole different age. And so to him make shade to make shade of that toward the Buffalo Bills franchise, I think it would have been no matter what franchise it was if he used them as an example. I just think he could have worded that differently. And it blowing up in his face Really does. I'm not shedding a tear over that, Jesse, you have to answer your question. All right, so the NBA, and I want to remind folks, our Major League Baseball package, annual package, is now $4.99 for the rest of the year. So you can get all of the all 10 of our handicapping experts over at gamblersworld.net. You can get the entirety of the Major League Baseball season right through the World Series right now for just $4.99, folks. So that's if you start to do the math, that equates to a pretty low number per month, pretty low number per day. And it's now we're talking June the 14th today. So July, August, September, at least 4 more months of baseball we're going to be seeing, 4+ months actually, if you count the World Series. So good value there. Jesse, the NBA Finals, 3-0. You know, I know you and Sean were high on Dallas in terms of their chances in this series. I also said that I thought this series, I was looking at least 6 games. I thought it would be much more competitive. It might still end up being that. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth because it's 3-0 and there's a game in Dallas tonight. But at the end of the day, I wasn't a conspiracy theorist. I didn't think it would go 6 or 7 games like a lot of these people out there would allude to, Sean being one of them, that the NBA, they garner more in terms of revenue if the longer the series goes. But that, again, are you a economic genius when you make a statement like that? No, but it borders on conspiracy, and I'm not going to buy into conspiracy theories. I will say this though, throughout the first 3 games, it's quite apparent to me that this is an extremely bad matchup for Dallas. And I think it sounds like I'm stating the obvious, but hear me out, Jess. Offensive sets for Dallas, everything is isolation, one-on-one, centered around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. I think you're playing right into the Celtics' hands when you do that. I think the teams, if you saw the Indiana series, even without Tyrese Halliburton, Indiana gave them a real tough time in 3 of those 4 games, one of which went overtime. Could we honestly say that Dallas has really given Boston a tough time in any of these 4 games? Yeah, they made a nice comeback in the fourth quarter of the last game, but they ultimately fell short. And I don't think I think the big difference with Dallas at this point is throughout the first 3 series, their supporting cast above and beyond Kyrie and Luka Doncic was a hell of a lot more productive in the first 3 series. And I don't know if the moment's too big for some of those guys, or they're guilty of just standing around and watching, or Luka and Kyrie are trying to do too much without getting other people involved. What's your take there?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to focus on the supporting cast, and that's sort of, I can't come back here and say that I didn't pick Dallas to at least compete in this series, and I said I liked the underdog in the series before it started, and it hasn't panned out for me. But I did say when I was picking Dallas that they're going to need guys like Derek Lively and PJ Washington to play out of their minds, because Boston has the edge in depth. They got guys like Drew Holiday. Porzingis for a game was playing out of his mind. Derek White, unbelievable at times. And Dallas just hasn't gotten even average performances from their role players. Derek Lively kind of pulled a disappearing act. He hasn't been logging as much minutes. I don't know if there's a lingering injury. He hasn't really been the same since getting kicked in the head by Karl Anthony Towns. Gafford's been getting more minutes, but he hasn't been playing particularly well. The free throw shooting's still an issue. Luka, maybe that injury to Luka is, let's face it, Luka doesn't look like he's in the right mental space, to be honest with you.
He's doing a lot of crying, Jesse. And I know that's apparent. It's been well documented, but he fouled out of the last game, but I can make a case that at least 4 of those fouls were stupid fouls, 25, 30 feet away from the basket or more. It's just his head's not right. He's letting his emotions get the best of him. And come on, every time he misses a shot, he's looking at the referees and yelling.
Yeah, no, his head's not in the right place, and I don't have a lot of optimism that this series is going back to Boston.
Yeah, and Kyrie had his best game of the series, and that still wasn't good enough. I mean, he had 20 points in the first half. At one point in the fourth quarter, they were down 21 points. They made a great comeback where they went on something like a 20-2 run to cut it to 3. And as you well know, Jesse, from our discussions over the years, is that when teams make comebacks of that nature in the NBA, they expend a lot of energy in doing so. And especially when you make that big of a comeback in a short amount of time. It's one thing when you whittle down a lead or a deficit of 21 points or more, and you were down 21 early in the second quarter, but with 8 minutes to go, you're down 21 and you go on a 20-2 run. It's pretty sure you're not going to be able to keep up that pace against a quality team like the Celtics. But having said that, let's turn our attention to Major League Baseball. And you got a good one. The Baltimore Orioles and the Philadelphia Phillies. It'll be Ranger Suarez, who's having a terrific year for the Phillies. And he's going to be opposed by Kyle Bradish from the Baltimore Orioles, two teams that are, you'd have a hard time arguing the Phillies, the Orioles, and the Yankees aren't the three best teams in baseball right now. But in any event, what's your take on just this game in particular, Jesse?
Well, there's been some line movement in this game, particularly with the total. It opened at 8. It's now been bet down to 7. And one of the guys in the industry that I respect the most, Ross, likes to tell me that think like a bookmaker. If you got a low number, maybe it's low for a reason. And I think it is low for a reason here. You got light winds blowing in Camden Yards. You got rain. It's not supposed to be the nicest day. They're supposed to get this game in, but there could be some delays. And you got a pitcher's duel, but what looks like a pitcher's duel. You got Kyle Bradish going for the Orioles. He's 2-0 with a 2.62 ERA. And, of course, Ranger Suarez with that 0.85 whip. He's 10-1 with a 1.1 ERA. And what else do I have?
1.81, just to be corrected.
What did I say?
1.01.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 1.81 ERA. And but the kicker is the ballpark here, Ross. Throughout my career, I've always thought of Camden Yards as a hitter's park. And just recently, I was looking through the park factors, and I was shocked to see Camden Yards sitting 24th in the majors as far as favorable to hitters. I guess they moved back the fences a couple years ago, and I don't remember it being the case so much last year. Maybe their pitching staff is a lot better this year, but not a lot of scoring in Camden Yards in 2024. And with these two pitchers on the mound and with the weather conditions the way they are, I'm seeing a 3-1, 4-2 type of ball game here, Ross, under 7 runs.
Yeah, good points on Ranger Suarez. You said 10-1. That's the decisions. The Phillies are 12-1 when he's their starter. And again, I'm looking at this over at Fox sheets right now. His ERA is 1.81 in those 13 starts. He's been very good on the road. And Kyle Bradish, here's what concerns me with Bradish. Not in good form over his last 3 starts. No, I take that back. Not in good form in his home starts this year. 3 home starts this season. The Orioles are 3-0 in those games, but it's not because of Bradish, because in those 3 starts, a 6.35 ERA and a 1.94 whip and only averaging 3.8 innings pitched per start. Suarez, great overall. He's 5-1 in his team starts on the road with a 2.04 and an even better 0.78 whip than his season total show in terms of his whip. He gives them major innings. He's averaging 6.6 innings pitched per start on the road. And we look at this line, and you're looking at Philly as an underdog in this game. And I just have a lean here toward the Phillies here, plus 115. at Camden Yards tonight. I know that Baltimore is really good at home, 23-13, but Phillies are a more than respectable 19-12 on the road, 28-10 versus right-handed starting pitchers. So it'll be a good game, but I'm not going to use this as a premium play. Jesse likes the under in this game, which is under 7. And I am going to lean toward the Philadelphia Phillies as an underdog in this matchup at plus 115. Jesse, anything else you want to add to what I'm?
Yeah, the Phillies do have the second best bullpen as far as ERA by relief pitcher in the majors at 3.08, and the Baltimore Orioles have the third best bullpen with a 3.10 ERA by reliever on the season. So both these bullpens can shut it down as well.
Yeah, and the Orioles bullpen over their last 7 games, you just mentioned their season-long statistics. I put a lot more stock in what's been going on lately because sometimes the season-long statistics could be deceiving, but in this case, they are deceiving because the Baltimore bullpen has pitched even better than the numbers that you've alluded to. Over the last 7 games, a 1.25 ERA and an 0.88 WHIP as a staff. 25-7 strikeout to walk ratio, only 1 home run allowed in 21 2/3 innings pitched, converted on 3 of their 4 save opportunities. And the Phillies bullpen is nothing to sneeze at, especially on the road when they get away from their home ballpark, which is a hitter-friendly ballpark, 281 on the road, and only allowing 7 home runs in 93 innings pitched, plus striking out 103 in 93 innings. The Phillies bullpen this year, very underrated. And also you could look at the fact that they average more than 1 strikeout per innings pitched, which is a key factor when you're assessing a bullpen, because when you're striking out hitters at that rate in the bullpen, you can wiggle yourself out of a lot of jams. A lot of times you're coming in as a reliever and you're in a precarious position with runners in scoring position. And when you could strike out batters at that rate, a red flag, not a red flag, but my antennas go up when I see that in terms of bullpen performance. So let me look at my game real quick. The Royals with Cole Reagans on the mound at the Dodgers with Gavin Stone. I'm going to look at the first 5 innings of this game. The total here is 4. Cole Reagans has been terrific all season in my mind. He's had a couple of shaky outings, but he's a young pitcher and he's performed extremely well. He's been in great form over his last 5 starts with a 1.50 ERA, 0.97 WHIP, averaging 6 innings pitched per start. 7 of his last 10 starts have gone under the total. Gavin Stone, over his last 8 starts, excellent form with a 1.81 ERA, averaging over 6 innings pitched per start. Here's the thing. Why am I not taking the game total under, and I'm taking the first 5 under 4? The game total has gone from 8.5 to 7.5. And I was asked this on another show, and I'll answer it the same way. Doesn't it concern you that the first 5 total hasn't moved? It stayed at 4, but the game total has gone from 8.5 to 7.5. Jesse, as you well know, you just had a situation like that in your game. And we know that when a total goes down a full run, that's significant and something you should stand up and pay attention to. Much different situation here. I don't trust the Kansas City bullpen. They're too vulnerable to giving up the long ball, especially over their last 6 games. The Royals relievers have allowed 6 home runs in just 29 innings pitched. The LA bullpen's been very good all season when it comes to pure numbers. But the one thing that concerns me, if you're going to go with a total under 7.5, which is a low number, the LA bullpen has allowed 29 home runs this year, including 16 in 40 games at home and 4 in their last 7 games. So I'm just going to eliminate the bullpens out of the equation. Am I concerned the number of 4 has stayed steady while the game total has gone from 8.5 to 7.5? No, because it's 2 separate markets, folks. So just because the game total went from 8.5 to 7.5, that's predicated on the money being bet on the under or sharp money being bet on the under, where the total of 4, okay, they haven't saw the need to make that type of move and adjust that number, but it has gone to minus 130 in terms of going under that total of 4. So there's been movement in that regard in terms of the amount of juice you have to lay. But I'm going to go under the total of 4 in the first 5 innings between the Royals and Dodgers, Jesse.
Yeah, I like it, Ross. Makes plenty of sense. When I looked at this game, I wanted to find a reason to take Kansas City as the dog. I wanted to back Ragans here on the road against the Dodgers, but Stone's just, you think of him as the fourth or fifth starter in the rotation for the Dodgers, the sort of the weak link, but his numbers don't support that. I mean, his numbers tell a different story, so I couldn't pull the trigger on the underdog in this one, and that would leave me with the only course of action would be to take the under.
Yeah, and I mean, when you say weak link, when you have a strong starting pitching rotation, your number 4 and 5 guys sometimes are better than a lot of number 2s at with other teams, and maybe whoever you're talking about may be just as good as an ace on another team. Also, I think a big contributing factor with him being a number 4 starter is the fact he's young on a very good pitching staff. So, I mean, would you consider? I would consider him a lot stronger starter at this point than Walker Buehler is. Walker Buehler has had great years in the past, but he's had a 2-year layoff, and he's coming off.
Yet still you'd pay a bigger price to back the Dodgers with Walker Buehler on the mound than you would with Stone on the mound, and that's just brand recognition, right? That's just There's a lot of bettors out there that look for a recognizable name that they've won with in the past, or they think of based on past performance as a better player, even though the numbers don't back that up.
And the bookmakers recognize perception in that regard. And part of their equations when setting a line, whether it be a money line or total in Major League Baseball, perception comes into play in a small part anyway. So, all right, let's get to our questions and comments. Before we do that, real quickly, Jesse, tell the folks what you may have going on tonight, what you anticipate having over the weekend, and why they should buy from you at at gamblersworld.net.
Well, Ross, I'm not currently watching a soccer game in the background, but if this show goes on too long, I will be watching a soccer game in the background because the Euros kick off in about an hour, and I do have a play on the opening match for the 2024 Euros. I'm really excited about that. I've actually done quite well with baseball. I don't put out a lot of baseball games, particularly at the end of the year with NBA and hockey. A lot of my time goes into handicapping those two sports. Once we're finished with NBA and hockey, it'll be soccer and baseball for the rest of the summer, and I'll probably ramp up my amount of plays, my volume. I will ramp up my volume as we get closer to the All-Star break. But the numbers are pretty good. I think I'm hitting over 60% with baseball this year, and you can't complain with that. Making some money.
Not at all. Not at all. And again, anybody who says, well, yeah, Jesse, you're using some big favorites. At the end of the day, when you look at the rankings, whether it be at gamblersworld.net or any place else, the rankings are based on money earned. And Jesse is a money maker. Okay, so if you look at his return on investment, he might be using an average money line a little higher than the rest of us. But at the end of the day, his return on investment speaks volumes. So, again, don't get too caught up with that as you may with another handicapper who's 60% and is losing money. We've seen that before too, right, Jess? So.
Well, the way I look at it, Ross, is the more rules you impose on yourself, the more you're taking away opportunities. And the rules are there for a reason. I know a lot of guys say, I won't go above this number. And that philosophy is sound. But let's be honest. If you saw, let's say, the Boston Celtics against the Atlanta Hawks, and you could get them at minus 160 on the money line, and Boston's at home, you're going to break your rule and make that bet if you can get it, right? Just based on the value that's presenting itself. So that's why I don't like to set these rules in stone of I won't go so high. I'm just looking for a price that I think is better than it should be.
Yeah, and you mentioned Derek Lively getting kicked in the head, and he hasn't been the same since. So was kicked in the head at the age of 8, and I haven't been the same since. So the only I've never really been real obedient with everybody else's rules, but I am pretty much with mine anyway.
Looks like you got kicked in the eye in yesterday's show. I saw.
Yeah, I had a burning in my eye. When my sinuses act up, my eyes sort of burn. And, I grinned and bare it and got through it, so. And I was by myself at that time because Chip Chirimbus was stuck in a cloud somewhere. Anyway, all right. Another great under on the NBA last night, Ross. And I think you're referring, last night it was. Was it last night? No.
Would have been 2 nights ago.
2 nights ago, yes. So thank you. I appreciate that as we did cash in with a free pick on Wednesday with the under 212.5 in game 3 of the series. And yesterday I gave out on the show, I gave out the under again at 211.5. Gentlemen,
home.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Money Motivated. I'm not sure that I remember you chiming in at any point, and I'm glad you did. And thank you. If you have any questions or comments for us, let us know. All right. So Ninja 13. Good morning, Ninja. How are you?
My man.
Your buddy Jesse in Thailand is always glad to hear from you, Ninja. Ninja, tell me something. Is a conspiracy in? Is the NBA going to allow this series to go 7 games, even though it looks like Boston's unequivocally the better team and they're up 3-0 in this series? Let us know, Ninja, because I always know you have strong opinions when that comes to that. PJ Washington over 13.5 points. Out of all the supporting players for Dallas, he's probably the most productive and looks the most confident, Jesse, out of all of them.
I'm not too high on any of them right at the moment, to be honest with you.
I mean, I know one guy, Maxi Kleber. This guy was just a great 3-point shooter, and before getting hurt was a productive player. Now he seems to be passing up wide open threes, and that's what I'm talking about with Pete. I think you got supporting players where, such as Kleber, who the moment might be too big from him. Whether he's not been confident since returning from injury, he's not 100% healthy. I know no matter what your health is, and you're a good 3-point shooter, and that's where you hung your hat on, and that's why you're in the NBA. You shouldn't be in a lineup if health is hindering you to the point where you're passing wide open threes up. I think it has more to do with the moment being too big and a lack of confidence. PJ Washington, to answer your question, Ninja, or to comment on your prediction here, I think you got an excellent opportunity to cash on that because the moment doesn't seem too big for PJ Washington. And if there's any contributing player on Dallas that's capable of coming through right now that I would have confidence in, it is him. All right, let's get to our next. Oilers to win 1 game or Mavs to win 1 game? I'm thinking Celtics sweep. Jesse?
I think what's going to happen, I think if you like the Mavs tonight, anybody out there who wants to have their money on Dallas, I'd say first quarter, first half only. Because if they're not winning at halftime, you expect them to pull it out of the fire in the third quarter. I mean, they're going to be so down at that point if it gets to the third quarter and they're losing. I don't want to have my money on Dallas at that point. So the way I see it happening, I've just got this mental picture in my. This is just a gut feeling. I think Dallas is going to treat this like one last stand, a shootout at the OK Corral, take a significant lead early, and then as we've seen from Boston, they match whatever Dallas throws at them, come back and win the game in the second half. So I see a Dallas first half, Boston full game scenario.
Yeah, and, Dallas has scored less than 100 points in each of the first 3 games. They're shooting 28.2% from beyond the 3-point arc. They're not getting to the free throw line a lot, and when they are, they're only hitting 71% during the series. And that's actually an improvement where they were in the first 3 series where they were less than 70%. So a lot of things are stacked up against them. But, it's not a given just because you're down 3-0 that you're going to throw the towel in. And you got two very proud players in Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Unfortunately, I think they're trying to put too much on their shoulders. And at this point, if the supporting cast has not played well to this point, I don't know what would lead one to believe that's going to change dramatically. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's less pressure on them now that they're down 3-0. I have no idea. But, I don't have a lot of confidence in Dallas right now. But, again, it's do the Celtics, do they put the nail in the coffin tonight? I got to believe that they're focused after they went through what they went through 2 years ago and the disappointment of last year. In one game, they're one game away from their goal of winning an NBA title and putting all the critics to rest. I just don't think you're going to get less than their best tonight. So we'll see. Bernardo, good evening. How are you, Bernardo? I'm sorry. Sorry about that, brother. I pronounced it Bernardo, but thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions or comments, Bernardo, please don't hesitate to ask or say what's on your mind. Ninja, can't believe these overrated clown Celtics getting a parade. I think at this point, that overrated stuff that you and Jesse and everybody else were talking about, we got to lay that to rest. At some point, guys like Jesse, who I know is capable of doing that, and he's not too proud to say he's wrong about the Celtics being overrated. But others out there will, go to their grave saying they're overrated. And I don't know how you can consider them overrated. I mean, yeah.
I'm definitely not too proud to admit I'm wrong, but I'm a little bit cagey, and I would like to shift the focus a little bit to Jason Tatum's overrated, and at least Jaylen Brown's going to win the MVP. And maybe people will forget everything I said about Boston and only focus on what I said about Jason Tatum.
There you go. Shifting gears. That's what he does when I ask him questions, folks. Very seldom do I get a direct answer on the question. It's more or less what he wants to talk about at that particular. I don't know about that, Ross, but here's what I'd like to say. Anyway.
I should have been a lawyer.
Yeah, no doubt. Litigator you are. Ray Otachi. Hey, Ray, how you doing, man? Thanks for chiming in. Ninja, me too. Shaking my head. Mavs have been so disappointing. Yeah, again, guys, at the end of the day, you could carry that a little too far about the Celtics being overrated. Are the Celtics overrated? No. Have the Mavericks been disappointing? Yes. I just think it's a bad matchup for Dallas. And again, you can't expose Boston's defense, which has been elite all year. You can't do so by playing isolation basketball on the majority of your offensive sets. You have to play like Indiana did against them. Share the basketball, move them around. And when you start playing isolation basketball and thinking that they're going to double your good guys and they're going to find the open man, you're asking for disaster against the Celtics. And I think that's more of the case than anything else. Mavs might as well sign Caitlin Clark to help them out. They probably would shoot a hell of a lot better than 28% from threes. And I can guarantee you one thing. If Caitlin Clark was getting the looks that Maxi Kleber's been getting in the first 3 games of the series, she would not turn down those open shots. The Fevers can score 91 points yesterday, but the Mavericks, they are men's, but by the way, can't score 100 points in these 3 games. Yeah, Ninja, we just talked about that, but thank you for bringing that up again. Mark, how are you, Mark? Appreciate you chiming in, my friend. How about Coach Kidd with the momentum killing timeout in the first period? Shaking my head. Yeah, who knows what the strategic mindset was at that point to call that timeout at then. Is that the reason why they're down 3-0 in the series? No. Has he been out coaching this series? I think he has. Because if not, I think he should have adjusted. Dallas has played good enough defense, Jesse. You know, the Celtics have scored 105, 106, and 107. When you hold teams that amount of points in the NBA through a 3-game span, you would think uh, in the NBA Finals, especially in a team with 2 stars offensively like Kyrie and Luka, that you would come away with at least 1 win in a 3.
Yeah, you would think.
Thank you.
I was looking something up. I saw Mars got a question for me, and I wanted to give him a good answer when it comes along.
He's ball hogger. Hey, Fernando, how you doing, man? And I'm assuming you're talking about Luka Doncic more so than Kyrie. And yeah, I mean, when you got a star of that magnitude, he's going to see the ball more than other players. Nothing drives me more crazy than this. And that was one of the things with Jason Tatum. He hasn't done it as much in this series as I saw him do it in the first 3 series. I can't stand this isolation basketball, okay? Look, if you're going to go one-on-one isolation, make your move early on. If there's nothing there, leave the other 4 players time on the shot clock to not have to force a shot. Instead of holding the ball for 7 or 8 seconds, then deciding to penetrate, then your penetration is either cut off because the guy that's guarding you is defending well, or they double teamed you, and then you dish it off to somebody with 3 seconds to go on the shot clock and put them in a very precarious position. And I think that's a lot of what I've seen so far, Jesse. Or do you want to talk about something else?
Well, I was just wondering, are we talking about Jason Tatum or Luka Doncic? Because I think they're both guilty of this.
Well, I'm saying Jason Tatum in previous series, okay, that I think he's been better in this series in terms of moving the ball quickly and not leaving it in his hands for too long a period of time or making decisive decisions. And I think that the problem with Luka that I've seen, and he's a great player and he's still putting up a lot of points, but he's, what percentage of the time is he handling the ball during their offensive possessions? I would venture to say well over 50%. And in the end of the day, I don't have a problem with isolation one-on-one as long as you're decisive, okay? When you stand there and you make a head fake, you're just standing without dribbling, Justin. You make a head fake, and you make another head fake, and then you step back. Then you go forward and try to get the defender to commit, and he doesn't. Then after 6 seconds, you decide to let's penetrate and make a decisive move, and then the defense reacts and doubles you and doesn't leave you with a quality shot, or the defender does a hell of a job. Then you kick it out, and there's 2 or 3 seconds to go on the shot clock, and either you got to force a shot up or it's in the hands of somebody you shouldn't be relying on at the end of the shot clock. So that's what I'm referring to. Does that make sense, Jesse?
Yeah. There's also another topic that people are starting to talk about is his weight, and that he really needs to drop about 15 to 20 pounds if he wants to continue to be one of the best players in the NBA.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that aspect right now because, if look, they're in the finals. We didn't hear about his weight problem in the first 3 series,
Well, it was only about 5 or 6 days ago that Dallas had the best backcourt in the history of the game, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, come on, man. You're making your rules up as you go along if you were going to touch upon that. I'm not referring to you, Jesse. I know that you're...
No. I mean, I agree that to pile on now and say that he's too fat, he wasn't too fat before, but you're going to get less injuries if you're carrying less weight. He's young enough now to get away with it, but I think as he approaches 30 and moving beyond 30, I think if he doesn't change something, it'll shorten his career. I mean, we saw this with LeBron James.
Why he's so injury prone too,
Yeah.
We
saw this with LeBron James when he went to Miami.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how old he was, but he was probably early 30s, and he'd always been playing. He looked more like a football player than a basketball player, and he completely changed his diet, dropped. And I'm not a LeBron James fan, but I can admit that physical change where he dropped about 20, 30 pounds, changed his diet. I think that allowed him to play for as long as he has, extended his career, and some of his best years came right directly after that.
and you're right. But we're talking about a 26-year-old here. And as I recall, there was a fat guy who was pretty good in the NBA for a long time, in Charles Barkley. And yes, he lost some weight and was better conditioned actually later in his career than earlier. And that was because exactly what you just alluded to with LeBron. It's if you want to extend your career at some point, you have to pay a little more attention to that than when you were younger. But my point is that because they're down 3-0, look at his numbers in the series. I mean, his raw numbers, he's scoring a ton of points. I would think that his assists are down. I'm not sure exactly. I'm going out on a limb when I say that without any factual evidence in front of me to say that. But again, I just think too much one-on-one basketball here. I want to listen to Ross rant about betting trends, angles, and algorithms again. Ross is a boss. Yeah, old Bretto, I've said enough in that regard. I appreciate you chiming in, my man. But, when people give me a hard time about that and I'm putting up the results I am, and specifically in the NBA, and actually since last August in all sports, they need to get a life because they're too lazy to do the work. And they've convinced themselves otherwise. And then there's also those contingent of people out there who've never been able to win on their own and don't believe anybody is capable of winning on their own or making money over the long haul. And, and again, there was a precedent set before us where a lot of bad handicappers out there who were better salesmen than handicappers that concentrated more on the point of sale than actually handicapping games. So I'd like to think we've cleaned up the industry much since that time. Hello, gentlemen. Just returned from London, caught the Phillies Mets series. How do you handicap those types of games that play in other countries and don't have a home field advantage? Eric, thank you for chiming in. That's a great question. And we'll get Jesse's answer on this as well. It doesn't bother me in the NFL as much. It bothers me in Major League Baseball because you go to parks in Mexico, you go to parks in Puerto Rico, you go to parks in London, you don't know what kind of wind conditions there are. Is there a ongoing trend? If it's an indoor stadium, what's the dimensions? In Mexico, we're talking about we're at an elevation rise, you know what I mean? Upper elevations, which the ball would just carry more. In Mexico, as I understand it, the dimensions of the ballparks are smaller. So I tend myself, Jesse, to stay away from these neutral site games out of the country when it comes to baseball for the reasons I just said. But football, to me, football is football. Okay. Most times than not, weather is not going to be an issue in these games in Europe because the general tendency has been that they're playing indoors. But anyway, Jesse, your thoughts on that particular matter?
I think one of us misunderstood the question, Ross.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it was you or me, but I thought what he was getting at was how do you handicap them returning from Europe after taking an overseas trip?
Yeah.
And, a lot of the NFL Europe games, a lot of the time they'll get a bye week following that trip so that to alleviate any of those concerns. But I think in this modern era with the travel being as it is, it's not as big of a deal, I don't think, when you have private flights, you have comfortable planes. I
think you misinterpreted it, by the way, Jesse. I double checked. I'd be the first one to say I'm wrong, but he just returned from England, meaning Eric. He caught the Phillies Mets series there. And how do you handicap those types of games that play in other countries and don't have a home field advantage? So he's actually asking you and me, how do you handicap those games in other countries when it's a neutral site game kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess you'd handicap it the same way you'd handicap a neutral site game when we see them quite frequently in the NFL or college football or any of the major sports in North America. There's different park factors, obviously, that you mentioned.
Yeah,
you mentioned that you'd like to see.
You wouldn't handicap neutral site games for the reason in baseball differently than you do in football. I mean, I just I would have a hard time agreeing with that. I would think, and again, I'm not saying you're disagreeing with me. I just think there's more to account for when you start playing baseball games in London, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. The dimensions of the ballpark seem to be smaller. And also, you're talking about Mexico playing at a elevated altitude where the ball's going to travel better. I don't know. I think that's where he was going with that. And my answer is, I don't hesitate in football, but in baseball, I tend to stay away from those games. So based on now you know what he was asking, is it still the same for you when you look at football and baseball at a neutral site?
No, I mean, I'm going to do as much homework as I can on that site and look at what happened. And generally, let's say if it's the first time, so they're going to play at Wembley or one of these London stadiums, and if it's the first time they've ever played there and there's no history, no previous major league games, then I'm probably going to want to stay away because I've got nothing to look at. But in these Mexico City stadiums and some of these stadiums where they've gone year after year, we're on the third or fourth trip. You can look at previous trips. You can go over the data, see if you can find any value there. So for that reason, I might get involved. I believe I was involved in one of the London games. I think I had a first half total in one of them, and they scored 6 runs in 1 inning, and which was exactly what the previous games in that London stadium were telling us, to expect high scores. I think if you played it came up half a run short of the overall total, but it was a high score and as expected. So, I mean, yeah, I guess the answer is I do my homework.
Yeah, Puerto Rico and Mexico pretty much is climates where you could play baseball 12 months out of the year. Having said that, because there's so much use in those stadiums for baseball or baseball specific stadiums, they're still not major league ballparks. I would say 90% of the time or more, you're not going to have the type of dimensions in those type of ballparks that aren't really engineered in terms of being a major league park. So if even 10 feet less to center field and 15 feet less to the alley and left center or right center makes a world of difference when you're looking at a total. And as you've seen, a lot of times when these games get played, not only overseas, but in the Caribbean or in Mexico, we're seeing elevated totals that go along with it too. So there's a lot to account for, and it's usually short series. And it's not like a team has now been located in Mexico year round. I just think I got too much on my plate to worry about trying to handicap a ballpark, let alone a ball game. That's why I tend to shy away. I know that sounds like an out, but at the end of the day, I'm looking for value, and I'm not into guessing. So, and I think there's too much guesswork to be had when you start talking about ballparks in England and ballparks in Puerto Rico, ballparks in Mexico. I'm all for those countries hosting games. But in terms of my job is to pick winners and beat a number. And it's difficult enough without having to account for all those other miscellaneous factors is what I guess I'm trying to say. Orioles, hey, Pounded, how you doing, my man? Orioles top 10 worst strikeout versus left-handed pitching. I took Suarez over 4.5 Ks. It's juicy minus 170, so I parlayed it with the Braves money line, so it's plus 140 for 2 units. All right, Jesse, your thoughts.
I think Sean has a saying, something about the best way to go 1-1 is to bet on a parlay.
Yeah, and the best way to lose is to bet on a parlay. Now, having said that, Pound It, we don't mean that in a disrespectful manner toward you, but you're asking the wrong guys in this network about parlays. I would, again, as I stated, if you're telling me that the Orioles are the 10 in top 10 worst strikeouts versus left-handed pitching this season. And you got not only a left-hander, but an elite left-hander going for the Phillies. I would more lean toward why not use Philadelphia as a dog here. That's me, so over 4.5 strikeouts. Yeah, I mean, if I was to parlay anything, which I don't parlay anything, I would be more inclined to go over 4.5 strikeouts and the Phillies plus 115, and I think you'll get you'll get just as good a payday by doing so. But I might be incorrect. But that's just our opinions, Pounded. But we appreciate you always chiming in. Orioles Tempo, we already did this. All right. What do you think about the Cardinals and the Cubs? Jesse, I'll let you take that one.
I'm not betting on the Cubs. I can tell you that much. They've been brutal of late. Kyle Gibson going for the Cardinals. He's been pretty solid. And the Cardinals, they haven't been that. Both teams basically have the same record, but the Cardinals have been better lately.
Yeah.
I don't know what the line is now. I think at open it was Cardinals as a dog. They might be a favorite by now.
No, it's right now as we speak, anywhere from minus 115, minus 114 to minus 120 to Cubs. They opened at minus 115, so not a lot of movement there, Jesse. The total has come down from 8 to 7.5. And I would hesitate to use any under on the Cubs with their bullpen. I did use the under in the first 5 innings yesterday at gamblersworld.net and cashed in on that play on the Cubs and the Tampa Bay Rays under 4 in the first 5, and it was 2-0 after 5. The game finished 3-2. But you're right, Jesse. St. Louis has played a lot better since a dismal start. And when we say a lot better, it's in relative to how they started the season. Let's not get carried away. And the Cubs, if anything, have gone the polar opposite direction where they got off to a good start. Now they can't hit, and their bullpen hasn't got it done. Their starting rotation has been erratic. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question in terms of the Cubs and Cardinals matchup. To me, it's a game I'm probably going to stay away. All right, next question. Thomas Bowe says 6 games. Hey, look at if Dallas wins tonight, they got to win in Boston. I don't know, Thomas. I know that's wishful thinking. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not impossible. It's possible, but it's highly improbable at this point. I would say, Jesse, if you want to comment on that at all, Jesse probably would like to see 6 games. Who knows if he switches his position again? If
I think I've seen enough, Ross. To be honest with you, I want to be put out of my misery at this point.
NBA, NHL, both sweeps. I don't think so, but we'll see. Again, when you're talking about 3-0 series, and both of the teams up 3-0 are on the road, I think it would lean toward maybe one of them winning at home in Game 4. But we'll see. And like you just said, we'll see. I mean, again, folks, here's a difference. The NHL, we've seen teams in the past. Now, it's a very small sample size of teams overcoming a 3-0 deficit in the past in the NHL. Not only to win series, but force a Game 7 at least. In the NBA, nobody's ever overcame a 3-0 deficit. And I think teams have only twice come from 3-0 down to force a 7th game. So if there's any likelihood of maybe extending the series, I think, in my opinion, it would be more likely in Edmonton doing it at home against Florida than Dallas against the Celtics. Who knows? Maybe both home teams will win tonight. All right, so here's our next question. Eric, there's an article out right now about Major League Baseball players getting an increase of threats from gamblers who lose due to that player blowing a game or not hitting. Look, that's been going on forever and a day. And Jesse, I know you remember this. I think a lot of this, people don't realize that the severity of those types of situations happening on a world stage in soccer more than our mainstream sports abroad. I mean, if you want to catch a very good ESPN 30 for 30, check it out on Colombia when they participated in the World Cup here in the States. And there was a defender, his name was Escobar. And the U.S. won that game 2-1, and there was an own goal scored by the U.S. where Escobar went to head it over the end line, and he ended up heading it into his own net. And a lot of
it was being the key word, Ross, that his name was Escobar.
Yeah. And he ended up getting assassinated about a lot of threats that weren't taken seriously, I guess, on his part anyway. And he ended up getting killed. He came out of a nightclub, as I recall, and before entering his car, somebody came up and just, shot him several times. So we've seen a lot of that in the European market, South American market, because there was a lot of gambling that went on there locally, and the intensity and the fervor of which soccer fans, especially when it comes to their own country, in world events or Euro events or one of those major tournaments, they get carried away. I mean, people in Brazil, when they lose the World Cup, there's always like how many suicides attributed to Brazil getting eliminated in the World Cup, Jesse. I mean, I know I don't mean to laugh at it because it's not funny, but by the same token, I know that's hard for people in the States to fathom that, but it happens.
In 2010, when the Canucks went to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Boston Bruins, Roberto Luongo was the goaltender in Vancouver. And man, it was a tough time to be Roberto Luongo. I mean, he was public enemy number one in the city. He couldn't show his face anywhere. The fans were not very kind to him. Not very kind to him.
Yeah, and there was a big riot that happened after Boston won Game 7 in Vancouver. So, now you're talking about Canadian hockey fans, and I know there's a lot of loyal fan bases in the States, but, I don't want to offend anybody when I say this, but, Canadian fans, in their mind, that's the only sport they watch. That's the only sport they're interested. That's where they hang their national pride on. So there's a lot of circumstances in which that occurs. Now, what you're alluding to, Eric, I think why we're seeing an increase in that is because no longer is gambling just legal in one state like it was in prior years in the state of Nevada. Now, it's just about every state in the union, with the exception of California, it seems. There's other states that aren't legal yet, but the majority of states in our union right now are legalized sports betting. So it only stands to reason that there's an increase in the number of people betting on sports here locally, and a number of people that there's always a small percentage that are irresponsible in terms of how they bet, with no money management in place. And these types of situations occur. We just starting to hear about them here now because of that. And especially people who don't follow soccer don't realize how much it's gone on in an even more serious manner abroad. So, Mark A., I think Ed are better for a series to go 4-0. I think odds are better for a series to go 4-0 if you like Boston. Yeah, I would think so, Mark. I think you're spot on there. And I think if I'm reading what you're saying correctly, I think that, I don't know. I didn't say that. I said Edmonton, I thought, was a better chance of winning. And yeah, I guess I was saying the same thing. But Jesse, any thoughts?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but if he's saying which one's more likely to sweep, the basketball or the hockey, I think the basketball is more likely to sweep because the Oilers, I think, can win a home game. I think they got more to play for, as you alluded to. The coming back from a 3-0 deficit has been done not just once or twice; it's been done many times in the NHL. Whereas, and I don't think the Oilers have injury issues. Really, the momentum can change so fast if they get a couple goals on Bobrovsky and he starts to struggle and his confidence gets affected. That would allow them to sort of come back. But I mean, the Mavs just have too much working against them. You got Luka is banged up; he's not playing well. Their role players aren't contributing. And they probably are well aware of the odds of them to come back is zero. So less motivation.
Yeah, in hockey too, folks. Don't forget, you're rolling 4 lines out there, which is 12 players. You're rolling 3 sets of defensemen out there, which is 6 players. You're relying on 18 players plus your goaltender, 19 players. So there's a lot of ways you could turn around a series when you're talking about 19 players, as opposed to depending on 7 or 8 guys in the NBA to turn a series around. And I know maybe that doesn't make sense to some of you. I think Jesse gets that point and goes hand in hand why teams have been able to overcome those types of deficits in the NHL compared to the NBA. And I'll give you another example. The AAA portion of, we talk about AAA in Major League Baseball. Well, in the NHL, the AAA level is the AHL. And just completed series where Hershey is going to their second consecutive Calder Cup final. They had won last year. They won the Calder Cup. Going into their conference final, they were 8-1. They jumped out to a 3-0 lead in this series in the conference final. They lost the next 3 games, and then they won Game 7 at home. So there's another example of what I'm talking about when you're talking about NHL or hockey compared to basketball. There's a whole different dynamic which applies to that in terms of chances of. Now here's the other one. Not even with Scott Foster can help the Mavs. You have Luka that can play defense, can't play defense. Coach Kidd know how to kill momentum. It's over. Celtics got everything the teams can shoot. I was asked this question this morning. Does it concern you that you like the under as a free pick in Game 4 when Scott Foster will be a referee tonight? He wasn't in Game 3, and he's got that reputation that precedes him, that the name tag of being a playoff or a series extender, which borders on conspiracy, folks. Okay. At the end of the day, Scott Foster being the referee here doesn't control pace of games. He doesn't control how good a team shoots. He has somewhat of control how many times you get to the free throw line, but Dallas can't make free throws anyway. So, again, if you're looking for a conspiracy theory here, again, I think you're a bit delusional. Now, having said that, okay, I do pay attention to umpiring trends because there is a distinct difference in deeming a guy to be a hitter-friendly umpire and a pitching-friendly umpire. In the NBA, okay, there's 3 guys that have the equal ability to make calls. So a home plate umpire calls a strike or a ball. Other than a check swing, he's not deferring to anybody else, the other 3 umpires, in terms of what a ball and a strike is. So there's a big difference. Jesse, I'll let you touch upon this.
You know that I like to get a little bit into the conspiracy theories, but I will say that if you're going to even indulge in the conspiracy theory, why are they going to extend it in Game 4 and not Game 3? And if you didn't see Dallas get the calls in Game 3, I don't see any reason to think they're going to get them in Game 4. I don't think it's that out of line to suggest that a home team might get a little bit preferential treatment from officials.
Oh,
and you don't think home teams get the calls?
I think that there's a human element that comes into play unconsciously. Yes. When crowds are booing, when crowds are getting on the referee, yes, there's a subconscious thing that goes on with a referee. For a referee to go into a game and say, you know what, anything, or a crew, for let's just say a 3-man crew, to get together before the game and say, hey, they're down 3-0. Let's make this thing a little more interesting, and let's start giving the on-defense calls and lean toward giving the home teams the benefit of the doubt as opposed to the road teams. I do not think that exists. And if it does, very limited. I guess you can go back to the Tim Donaghy days, but have we proven a referee from in that to that magnitude to be cheating throughout the course of an NBA game? No, we haven't. It's just trends, okay? every referee, every baseball umpire behind home plate is going to have a trend in the way they referee or umpire a game. Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go as far as to say that they're rigging the games or cheating or anything. But yeah, I think different officials can influence the game differently, and I think that I think that calling the game differently can allow series to squeeze an extra couple games. But we've seen no evidence of that so far, and I don't expect to see it tonight.
Yeah, and the difference is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, as opposed to baseball, where they don't award assignments in the playoffs and the World Series based on performance during the regular season and how they grade out. In the NBA, they do. Okay, mm-hmm. So I would tell you at this stage, we're getting referees that have graded out very good throughout the course of the season. And what we're talking about in terms of being influenced by the home crowd is there's a phrase that goes back a long way. It's called rabbit ears. So I would tend to believe if there's rabbit ears amongst officials in the NBA, and there is, that's been deciphered through in the grading process, and guys like that don't end up in the NBA finals. Okay, so a lot of times I think people get too emotional about not being on the right side of a result. In terms
there is some history between Scott Foster and Chris Paul that would appear to be quite dubious. It seemed like Foster has a personal problem with Chris Paul, and vice versa. Those two guys just really don't like each other, and I think there might be something to the fact that I don't think the officials are happy with the way Luka's embellishing, and maybe they're holding that against him. Maybe that's preventing Dallas from getting favorable results.
I can't see anything. Let's just go with his defensive fouls, okay? I think a lot of his defensive fouls are careless, undisciplined, and stupid, to be quite frank with you. Now, have there been a couple instances where he's gone to the hole and should have got the benefit of the doubt? Maybe, okay, but not as much as he's crying about every time he misses a shot when he goes to the hole. So again, now in terms of the Chris Paul and Scott Foster thing, Jesse, I'll tell you the same thing I told everybody when I used to umpire baseball as a young man, okay? It's your job to adjust to me, not my job to adjust to you. So shame on Chris Paul, because if he thinks by his crying and his arguing with Scott Foster he's going to come out on top by doing that and sway his mind or get the benefit of the doubt on the next call? No, that's not going to happen. Quite frankly, that's stupid on Chris Paul's part. That's just my opinion, Jesse. You know, whether that be right or wrong, I don't know, but that's my opinion based on experience at a lot less magnified a situation as we're talking about right here. You know, at the end of the day, you keep riding an official and it becomes a personal thing. Who's going to come out on top? It's not the player. You know what I mean? It's not the player. So, I mean, that's Chris Paul's fault in my estimation. Derek White have been a very good supporting cast. Has been a very good supporter. Then a smart addition to the team, Drew Holiday. If he played like in game 2, Holiday could be MVP. Look, Holiday's never going to be the MVP of a series when he's playing with guys of the caliber of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But I said it early in the series, right, Jesse? Correct me if I'm wrong. That I thought Drew Holiday is the most underrated aspect of Boston's success this year. The guy can make threes. He could drive to the hole. He's an excellent perimeter defender. He's been all NBA defensive teams, first or second team, several times throughout the course of his year. He won a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks, again, playing second fiddle to Chris Middleton and the Greek. So, again, Jesse, your thoughts, because I have nothing but admiration for how Drew Holiday, number one, is so unselfish, Number two does the little things you need on a championship team to win.
Let's not forget about Derek White. I mean, he's playing pretty well as well, and
as usual, you allude the question about Drew Holiday, and you talk about Derek White. How about Drew Holiday first, and then talk about Derek?
Okay. No, I mean, I said it before the series started. If Boston gets this kind of play from their role players, it will be a sweep. And they haven't let up. Drew Holiday and Derek White, even some of the other guys on the team. I mean, Porzingis had his moments. Jaylen Brown continues to be the best player on the floor. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The depth, they got the depth, and everybody's playing well at the same time. And that's not happening for them.
Cole or Hauser coming off the bench and contributing, hitting threes, playing good defense. You got a guy like Peyton Pritchard coming in off the bench and playing well. The list goes on. I mean, Boston has shown that they don't really miss a beat when they go to their bench compared to other teams. Let's put it this way. Are they as good without their starting five all on the floor? No. But as compared to other teams, when they go to their bench, there's not as much a drop-off as would affect a team like Dallas right now, for example. Now, we didn't see that in the first three series, but we're seeing it this series. So, all right.
To be fair, when I was picking Dallas as the underdog in the series, they were coming off a series against Oklahoma City where Luka was injured half the time and wasn't their best player in several of those games. PJ Washington was carrying them for a while. Derek Lively was playing out of his mind.
The lefty, and the lefty, Anderson, or what? I can't remember his name now. The lefty,
Derek Jones Jr.
Derek Jones Jr. Yep.
So I was acknowledging that this had to continue. They had to continue to get those kind of performances from their role players, and that just didn't happen for them.
Yep. Don't forget, folks, you can get our Major League Baseball package right now, right through the entire season and World Series at gamblersworld.net. Don't forget at gamblersworld.net. That price is $4.99 for the entirety of the baseball season through the World Series for any handicapper of your choosing. Also, folks, I have the winning side tonight in the Game 4 between the Celtics and the Mavericks, up for sale right now for $35. And, folks, my NBA postseason 117 and 72 since 2022. It's good for 62%. Also 40 and 24 this year. Coming off a winning night last night as I had one pick in baseball, that one. And also you can get all of Jesse Schule's picks as well. Jesse, you have a pick up in the NBA tonight, correct?
I do not.
You do not?
I do not.
What do you have up tonight?
I got the soccer and I got a CFL pickup.
All right. So there, and Jesse's one of the best CFL handicappers you'll find anywhere on the internet today, folks. He's a native Canadian on the western side of Canada, and a lot of experience in that regard, not just because he's Canadian, because he's a hell of a handicapper. We already addressed this, but Derek White, again, I didn't mean to cut you short. I had to break your hump because, again, you didn't answer the question directly, but now you could talk about Derek White. I think he was a hell of an acquisition by the Celtics. I just think that there's noticeable difference with Drew Holiday. He wasn't with them when they went to the finals the last time. He is now. Anyway, go ahead with your Derek White assessment.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add. I mean, I just think he deserves as much credit really as anybody. The way he's played, his defense, leading the best blocking guard in the NBA. And it seems to me that it was only a few years ago when he had trouble getting in the lineup and getting playing time with Boston. And now he's such a valuable piece. And he's probably the hardest worker on the floor, night in, night out, or one of the hardest workers on the floor. I respect his game. I'm a fan of Derek White.
Yeah, and, on the Wednesday telecast in Game 3, one of the analysts, and I can't remember exactly who, made a good point. They said, we keep hearing Derek White's one of the best shot blockers and shot blocking guards in the NBA. When you look at the overall statistics, Jesse, he's one of the best shot blockers in the NBA, period. So those are the kinds of things that go unnoticed and are a contributing factor to teams being successful. All right, so Mars got a question here. Any thoughts on Euro Cup, Jesse? Germany always looks strong, like them to win it all. That's all, Jesse.
Yeah, so I was distracted about half an hour ago, Ross, when I saw this question come up in the chat, and I did go look it up for Mar because I think he's right. Germany is the host nation. Host nations tend to have more success in tournaments such as this. Germany was terrible in the last World Cup, but they've got some great young players, and I do think Germany looks strong, and I like their chances. But the odds just don't justify a bet. They're getting plus 550 to win it all at Bet 365, and they're going up against 3 or 4 teams that have more talent, arguably, than they do in England and France and Spain and Portugal and Netherlands. There's so many quality teams. I wouldn't be able to make a futures bet at anything less than 10-1, and 5.5-1 doesn't cut it, but I can bet on them. They're playing a game here in about 5 minutes, and I can bet on them in that game if I wanted to. So
yeah, we better end the show within the next 5 minutes, folks, because that one hook look that he gives you with the one eye up on a TV will take force. Jesse, I don't want to put you in a precarious position, and if you're selling this, you could sidestep the question and we'll move on. But if you were to make a futures bet, or if you have made a futures bet that you can share with the public without costing yourself money, is there a pick that you would suggest in terms of value when it comes to winning the Euro?
Well, I have been looking at it, Ross, and it's just so hard to isolate that one team. Like I said, I think Germany has as good a shot as any, but the odds just aren't there. There's nothing jumps out at me as great value. So I would have liked to have put a future bet out, but I didn't do it just because nothing's really bouncing off the page.
Also, like Spain with Morata in Caraval and Navas, a lot of experience stacked on that Spain team. Jesse?
Agreed. And, there's a handful of others as well. But screw Spain. Spain does have a bit of a history of choking in these on the grand stage. I know they won it in 2010, but aside from that, they haven't fared so well in international competitions.
Guardians, let's see. Thomas Bowles says he likes the Reds, the Guardians, and the Phillies / Red Sox. Let me say that again. Reds, Guardians, and the over in the Phillies Red Sox game.
The Phillies aren't playing the Red Sox.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That might have been a question you might have been asking a couple days ago, but it doesn't apply here. Ninja, I hope they lose. I think Ninja would go to a wedding and bet like whoever's in the pew in front of him. He would probably ask them if they want to take bets on the over and under how many years the marriage lasts, because Anyway,
or maybe when they ask if anybody's got anything to say, speak now or forever hold your peace, and he's the guy that's going to stand up.
All right, folks, you got about 3 minutes, okay, to ask anything you wish, because it's time for us to start wrapping up here. Let's go Netherlands. Hopefully they get that refs who give 3 red cards to the other teams and go celebrate with them after the win. More conspiracies. Let's see here. Let's get the people who might not have been on here. Roberto, Arizona versus White Sox. Is the over a good play? Pitching matchups. The thing with the White Sox is, are they going to be able to hit enough? This opened at 9.5. It's down to 9. I know Nelson from Arizona has struggled. So is Flexen. The question is, sometimes Chicago, meaning the White Sox, can make a subpar pitcher look pretty good, because they just can't hit their way out of the paper bag at times. So, Jesse, any thoughts that you want to add there? I don't have a strong opinion when it comes to that question.
I did look at it, Ross, and I decided to back away. I was looking to play the over because both pitchers have struggled. But as you say, the White Sox just don't hit. So maybe you want to look at an Arizona team total if you can get a good number. But other than that, I don't think you can count on the White Sox to contribute with too many runs.
Arizona scored 11 yesterday, 7 coming in 1 inning. So that seems like a pretty intelligent choice for Jesse there. Eric, my question was, how do you handicap those teams when they play in other countries? Ross is correct. Yeah, I think we answered that, Eric. So thank you, though. We appreciate you. Time zone challenges, etc. Yes, time zone challenges I don't worry about because teams are in the NFL, for example. Specifically, I could answer that question as it applies to the NFL more than Major League Baseball. NFL teams travel way early to go to Europe. Mostly, they're leaving if they played a Sunday game the week before or the prior game. They're usually on a plane by Sunday night or early Monday morning to get to Europe and adjust to the time zone differences. So when you're in a country for 6 days, and I would venture to say that more times than not, time zone challenges aren't going to be as much a factor as one may think. Jesse, you want to comment on that?
I agree with you, Ross. I think also there's a lot of historical trends dating back a couple decades that would suggest travel, time zones, and a lot of these things affect teams more so than I think in this current day and age. Travel has become more comfortable. There's teams are better equipped to deal with adverse situations. So in the past, I think travel was a bigger concern than it is now.
Mark comes in and says home field means so much less in the NFL. Whoever has home field, I usually take 1 or 2 points in the spread. You're right, Mar, but it's a little more than 2 points. It's anywhere from 2.5 to 3 points. And depending on the strength of the home field and the opponent that team is playing, that could vary to as much as 3 to 3.5 points. So, but you're right. Overall, you're correct. I think just 1 or 2 points, though, is a little low in terms of your estimation, but not far off. Jesse?
I mean, maybe if you're talking about the Chicago Bears, 1 or 2 points is correct, but some teams, I think you have to give them a little bit more respect for their home field.
Yeah, well, Chicago Bears even. I mean, if you're playing the Bears in December and you're a West Coast or hot weather team, I don't think 1 or 2 points is going to be what they allot to give the Bears in terms off the point spread in terms of how you put odds up on that game. Remember, folks, every team has a power number in the odds makers' minds, and those power numbers are based on playing on a neutral field, and then they add points for home field advantage for the reasons why we say. Thank you, Stop Geo. Thank you for chiming in today. We appreciate you. Only NFL teams have home field advantage. The Dolphins because the visitors center would side where the sun is beating on them, and Miami sit on a shaded side. That's a good point because it's true, especially that really only applies to the 1 o'clock games, though, Ninja. Okay, when they play at 4 o'clock, the sun switches, and that's not the case where it's totally on the home team. So, but I that definitely comes into play on 1 o'clock games. Phillies over, Red Sox, no mercy. Yeah, we discussed that already, Thomas. GM Pros from the Joes here in Arizona. Thank you, Playmaker. We appreciate you. All right, folks, time to wrap it up here. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for all your questions and comments. Don't forget to give us a like. It's a small token of your appreciation for the time, work, and effort we put into bringing you a quality podcast 5 times a week here on the Winner Circle Sports Betting podcast or channel. Speaking of the Winner Circle Sports Betting channel, if you have not subscribed, it costs you absolutely nothing to do so. 100% free, no strings attached. Click that subscribe button, and then take a second more to go into your alert notification settings and click on that for the Winner Circle Sports Betting channel. You'll be notified immediately upon any of our podcasts going up here weekly. I will be back on Monday. I think somebody will be back on Monday. I'm not sure. We need Jim's going to sort that out over the weekend, but I'm planning on being back on Monday with Doug Upstone and Chip Chirimbus. Jesse will be back on Tuesday. Jesse does shorts for us every day, folks. So check out his 2-minute shorts where he gives you a free pick on a daily basis as well over at the Winner Circle Sports Betting channel. Jesse, give them one more reason what you want them to do with the like button.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button, folks. Thank you for joining us today. You all have a great weekend. For Jesse Schule and Ross Benjamin, take care and God bless.